We'll start the session immediately. On behalf of the Foreign Correspondent Club and myself, I will be very grateful for you people. I'm grateful to you all coming to the club. I'm more grateful to Mr. Salman Khurshid for accepting our invitation and a short notice to the club. And I'm very happy and honored because I have been associated with the Indian foreign policy for years, being covering the India for the last 4 decades. So I understand. I had the privilege of interviewing him twice for my channels when I used to be working with them, and I understood the intake of the foreign policy. Mr. Salman Khurshid, as you know, does not need introductions. I think you could see him in every field, whether in the court, whether in the foreign policy, whether in the Islamic Center. He is a man of all seasons. We have seen him active and still very active, touch wood. And we are going to start the program by asking my secretary of the club to introduce our chief guest. And we will start the session by asking Mr. Salman Khurshid to speak about the book. Then we will open the floor for question and answer. Then you can feel free to ask your question. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Prakash.
Thank you. I think Mr. Khurshid doesn't need any introduction. You have already introduced him. And
Do it anyway.
and I have got such a long list of his achievements and illustrated in the career. I think I am going to be very selective. Of course, he is one of the topmost advocates of the country. And then he has been in politics and has occupied very high positions. He was our former External Affairs Minister. He was our former Minister of Law and Justice, Water Resources, Minority Affairs. And then he has been a Member of Parliament, I think, since 2009. I think that was the first stint. Before that, 1993, 91. And I did not go further. And then he is one of our extremely, or rather, that is the wrong word, highly educated politicians, in the sense that he continued that tradition. I don't think that is the case anymore, but then, those days, extremely highly educated. He studied at Edmund Hall University at Oxford, then, of course, St. Stephen's College and Delhi Public School. What more? And I think today we are here to listen to him as a scholar. And I'll not take much time, and welcome you, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I give the mic to Honorable Minister, former Minister, Mr. Salman. Could you please give us your thought of this book? Because I could see so many eminent personalities, academicians, politicians, historian, ex-prime minister in the book. What prompted you into making this book such a valuable, especially at this critical moment? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and very distinguished guests, members of the club. And I should say, feel a sense of special obligation that you took on the traffic of this evening to get here, and in fact, a huge number of events that are happening in the city. Therefore, I feel a sense of comfort that there are still enough people who want to listen to us, and therefore we must tell our story with impact and with effect. The idea of doing this book is, frankly, was because so much was happening in the world that we felt was sort of bypassing us against the sense that was being given in the country that we were at the center of what was happening in the world. And that, if I may say so, was being attributed to things that have happened since 2014. We had, in a subtle manner, tried to suggest to the government that foreign policy is a matter of continuity. That you, particularly in our case, in India, since independence, we had a national consensus on foreign policy. And what may be seen today as being a combative difference between the opposition, led by the Congress party, my party, and the governmental establishment, what be seen as maybe divisive, maybe combative, difference between 2 points of view were not very apparent in India during the years that we ruled this country, and certainly after independence. The perceptions that people had were that there's a shared consensus on foreign policy. Significantly, there were always some differences that you could pinpoint. There were differences, assumed differences, which were somewhat muted, whispered in the corridors of public life and politics. There were differences, say perhaps on issues like how close we should come to Israel, but I think a lot of those differences over a period had evened out, and one can safely say that there was consensus on foreign policy. And one of the important features of that consensus was a special relationship that we had with the Soviet Union. And we cannot obliterate and forget the special relationship we've had with the Soviet Union. We had moments of convergence with the United States of America because we shared a great deal with the United States of America in terms of democratic values, in terms of constitutionalism, and so on. But we shared also aspirations about egalitarian distribution of goods in society, which we took an inspiration from the Soviet Union then. So there was a special relationship with Soviet Union, which should have, and perhaps to an extent, translated itself into a relationship with the Russian Federation. We've had good years and bad years as far as the United States was concerned, but the government that I have proudly belonged to, the government led by Dr. Manmohan Singh, made a very major breakthrough with the United States of America when the 123 civil nuclear agreement was entered into between India and the United States. Just as there was a major breakthrough with China when after many, many years of aloofness, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi went to China after much discussion in government, and the famous handshake that he did with the Chinese leadership. So there were moments of major breakthroughs, but within the larger landscape of the NAM movement, of the non-aligned movement, where we stated very clearly that we could never be part of any bloc, Western or Eastern, left or the so-called free world. We could never be a member of the bloc, but we would have friendship and we would have strategic autonomy. We would get the best from the world, etc. And India was respected for it. India was respected for it by the entire NAM movement, by the Global South, and indeed by the what were then two blocks or two ends of the Cold War. It is not for us to say why all that changed. I think the world knows that the events that happened with the coming together of East and West Germany, with the dissipation of Soviet Union, and the changing attitudes in the United States of America, which have gone to an extreme now in the last 4 months. When we were in the foreign policy paradigm that we followed in the years the Congress government was in power, we knew where we were. That is not to say that we didn't have setbacks. Obviously, we'd had a setback with China. We had other setbacks, or at least other areas of stress and strain, but we dealt with it, and we felt that we knew where we were, where we stood, and we were quite confident that the world knew where we stood and what could be expected of India, and how far you could push India and how far you could not push India, and where the red lines were drawn were very clear to the world. And we did have, and I say this with some emphasis, we did have a leadership role to play in the world. We may not have sat at the highest table in the global arena, but we certainly had a leadership role, and that leadership role was closely linked with the presence of people like Dr. Manmohan Singh, first as an international diplomat, economic scholar, then as the finance minister of India, and finally as the prime minister of India. So today we are being asked questions about what we did, what did we do when we stood with China as far as China's inclusion in the Security Council was concerned. What did we do when we made what was a far-sighted arrangement to accommodate China as far as Tibet was concerned? What did we do when we took a position where we felt that constant bickering and warring with our neighbor Pakistan would not be for the good of India's future generations? And we thought that we would look for parameters of living together, coexistence with Pakistan. Now, not everything we did succeeded, and not everything anybody does succeeds. But today we are being asked questions about that having been done as though there was a mistake that we made. We did what we did in the best understanding of the global perspective at that time. Whether India was in a position then to get into a prolonged war, and whether a war would have been to India's advantage, etc., etc. These are questions that historians have answered, scholars have answered. But one thing was very clear, that we knew where we were going, and the great breakthrough under Dr. Manmohan Singh as finance minister, and the Prime Minister then, Mr. Narasimha Rao, the big breakthrough for India as emerging as an economic entity, a major economic entity, writing away and closing the book about the years of deprivation and years of being in a situation of having to seek even food aid from the rest of the world, to becoming a country that would then be able to supply a range of services and goods to the world. And that major breakthrough, I believe, has put India in a good position. That major breakthrough would have been the basis of how the Americans dealt with us in the 1-2-3 agreement, etc., which was completely an unimagined thing at a point of time, but which was a major breakthrough for Congress to have achieved. Now, how is all that seen today, and how do we see ourselves? Because we are talking about foreign policy for the new age. There is an assertion, and I don't question that assertion directly, because every government that is elected has a right to formulate its policies, has a right to take credit for anything that goes right. But to say that nothing was right till 2014, and everything right that has emerged after 2014, is somewhat of a one-sided statement. is all that I would say by way of being critical of what they're doing. They, of course, say that everything before 2014 was wrong. Well, if that's the case, where do we stand today? Do we stand at a point where we know what we are and where we are? It's all very well to say we are Vishwaguru, always say that we will be the teachers of the world, that we will lead the world, we will be the global leaders, etc. We will be a very emerging special economic power and a military power. It's all very well to say this, but let's look at the ground. Let's look at the ground. And I ask questions. I think it's only fair that at this point we ask questions. The questions about where do we stand with China? What is that we have lost to China? What is that we have gained in our relationship with China over the last 10 years, over the last 1 decade? And how had we handled China post-1962? Of course, 10 years beyond 1962 onwards, how did we deal with China? A big question, a big question. Where do we stand with China today in economic terms? Where do we stand with China today in terms of influence in the world? Where do we stand with China today in terms of our national security? Are big questions that the present government has not been prepared to answer. They may have answers, but if somebody doesn't give answers, you can presume that they don't have answers. Where do we stand with the United States of America? We were supposed to be friends with the United States of America. We were tom-toying the kind of special relationship that the President of the United States, the present President, incumbent President, and Indian Prime Minister had. What do we get for it? We get 50% tariffs. And now we are being told from yesterday that the President had now the authority to impose 500% tariffs if we don't give up our purchases of oil with the Russian Federation. Where does that leave us as an autonomous nation, strategically autonomous nation? What decisions can we take? We've been told not too many months ago that Europe must learn to understand that Europe's problems are not the problems of the world. But let's see today, are Europe's problems becoming problems of the world or not becoming problems of the world? Today, United States and Europe have a problem, and Europe's entire problem today have become the problems of the world, just as America seems to be becoming a problem for Europe and a problem for the world. Where do we stand there? Is anybody saying to India, can we please talk? Is there something you can do? There was a role that we played on Palestine, a very important role that we played on Palestine. Where are we today as far as Palestine is concerned? We have a special relationship, which is a comforting relationship with Israel. But the question is, did we ever choose to have a relationship with Israel at the cost of our perennial commitment to Gaza and to Palestine? Is there a compromise being made here which is unacceptable to the people of India? People of India did not support the consensus on Palestine, on Gaza, because that involved Muslims versus Jews, or Muslims versus non-Muslims. It was the kind of support that Mahatma Gandhi and India gave to Turkey when we stood against the British as far as the grand plans of those imperialist countries were concerned. It was not based on religion. It was based on the aspiration of freedom of people with whom we as Indians identified. And what have we turned that into today is the big question. The big question today also is, where do we stand with climate change? Where does India stand on climate change? Where does India stand if you take the most recent test case? And the most recent test case was of Operation Sindoor. did what I could on behalf of my party to support the government in putting its case to the world. And I do believe that there was a case to be put to the world. But having put the case to the world, have we been able to talk sufficiently and satisfactorily between the government and ourselves and the opposition to understand what happened in Operation Sindoor? What was the outcome of Operation Sindoor? Militarily is a different subject altogether. And successes of the Indian Army and successes of the Indian establishment are not to be questioned. We support them. But the point remains, who stood by us during Operation Sindoor? Which country gave us unqualified support during Operation Sindoor? And many more questions have been asked since then. Those questions need to be answered. When we are in the process of engagement in a battle or a war, understandably, you cannot answer questions. But subsequently, as a democracy where everyone is entitled to know what the truth is, questions have to be asked. They can be answered in Parliament, they can be answered behind closed doors, but they must be answered. And finally, I want to say to you, the attitude in a democracy, I, for myself, remember when India has to face the onslaught of several countries supporting Pakistan on the issue of human rights in Jammu and Kashmir. I was sent by the government then as a Minister of State, but I was led, the delegation was led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, who was then the leader of opposition. That was the kind of comfort there was between the opposition and the government when national issues were concerned. Is that what we see today? Is there that kind of collaboration? Is there that kind of cooperation? Is there that kind of conversation? Is a very, very big question. Foreign policy cannot be partisan. It cannot belong only to a party that may be in power. Foreign policy has to be a foreign policy of the entire country. And that, unfortunately, is missing. A new age foreign policy cannot be selective, cannot be dominated by one particular faction, no matter how large that faction is of the population of the country. It has to be a combined consensual matter, which I believe is not something that we see of recent times, etc. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Very well said, well articulated argument you have issued and provocative at the same time. That I can say that the current situation in the world, we see that it is more of vindicating the Congress party foreign policy, because what we are seeing now is the unilateralism and exceptionalism of the United States by invading a country, hijacking a person out, then India South-South cooperation, India taking the lead in South-South cooperation. There are lots of issues where the Congress have settled the foreign policy on those lines, and I do agree with you. But I just wanted to ask you a question before I open the floor for our colleagues to ask. If you are the foreign minister of India right now, and this happened during your tenure, what will be your answer to this before I open the floor? Thank you.
Well, the truth is, the first thing I would have done was to call my colleague, the Home Minister, and said, you get things at home on the right track. I will solve the problems internationally. You cannot segregate what is happening at home with what is happening internationally, because the world watches very, very carefully. If you have a single voice that speaks for what the people of India want, desire, and support, that voice will carry much greater weight. We have taken a very clear, of course, a very, very balanced view about what has happened in Venezuela, and I can say very clearly that it is unacceptable. And it's unacceptable in many ways. It's unacceptable because it is going against the grain of international law. But it is unacceptable because our standard position on foreign affairs, on international relations, has always been of strategic autonomy and of non-interference. Non-interference, the Panchsheel is something that still remains completely etched in the minds of our top diplomats. No matter what the political influences may be, and no matter how they are pushed by a specific ideology, I don't think Panchsheel has ever been given up. And Panchsheel does not permit us to say anything else except that this is unacceptable. The important thing is that if we are good at diplomacy and we are good at foreign policy, we should have the courage, the conviction to say such things to our friends. You don't have to break up friendships to tell the truth. If you cannot speak the truth to your friends, then your foreign policy and your convictions are not worth anything. And I think that's where we have failed.
Thank you. I'll open the floor for question and answer, but please address a very brief question so we can take the maximum and introduce yourself as well. Yes, please. Can you wait for the mic to come, please? Yeah.
To, of course, Mr. Salman Khurshid, this is Manish Kumar Jha, op-ed editor at National Newspaper, name not required to be told. You talked about in your, over the period of foreign policy during the Congress, something we call non-aligned, which is more like strategic autonomy. We are not aligned to anybody, but anyway we tilted towards Russia. But this government has a similar policy in a different name called strategic autonomy, which you also mentioned a couple of times in your speech. And then we are friends with all, not very close friend with anybody in particular. And you also mentioned, because of this, maybe during the Operation Sindoor, no country without non-conditional supported India in a global platform, apart from Japan, perhaps one or two words. Is it a good time that we should somehow tweak our foreign policies and get closer to some of the country who could be the part of the crisis when we needed that? Because more or less I see the ethos and the fundamental of the foreign policy remains the same from that time to this time, ups and downs, Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your saying that strategic autonomy is the core of the policy that India favors, irrespective of what label or name you give to it. Strategic autonomy is important. But strategic autonomy does not mean that you do not persuade friendships. Do we have friends in the world today is very important. What are friendships for? Friendships are for your getting what you need in a particular moment. That you're being listened to you when you believe something is happening and it should not happen. I would only have said that if somebody said to us, they are friends, Israel is our friends, let's take that as an example. Did Israel say to us, what do you want me to do? I'm not going into the merits of what Israel may believe it has a case for, or what Palestine may believe it has a case for. I think we can talk about that separately. But the fact remains that Israel at any point say to India, what is it that you want us to do? Was India ever asked, can we go beyond this or can we stop here? How many times did the Israeli Prime Minister visit the United States of America? How many times did he pick up the phone and talk to the President of the United States of America? And how many times did he do that with the Indian Prime Minister? The same thing with Ukraine. Did we have the courage and conviction to speak to friends? Russia is our friend, and Russia has shown repeatedly that in tough times it is our friend. But did we not slight Russia and start drifting towards the United States of America, only to wait for revival of contacts with Russia when President Putin came here? So the question is, what have we got with strategic autonomy that is now the core of the present foreign policy? And what did we get as part of the NAM movement, where we had the same strategic autonomy? NAM movement had a huge number of the global south countries following India and looking at India as a special friend. Is that today? I will be fair. There were some disappointments during the NAM movement in 1962. I will be fair that there were, but not on the level at which there were such such sort of setbacks as far as Operation Sindoor is concerned. So I think there's a qualitative difference between NAM movement and strategic autonomy as it's articulated of late.
सर आलोक झा INS न्यूज एजेंसी से। सर मेरा सवाल ये है, आपने फ़िलिस्तीन का जिक्र किया, इज़राइल का जिक्र किया, क्या आपको लगता है कि अभी जो अगर विदेश वर्ल्ड के तौर पर देखा जाए भारत की जो स्थिति है वो फ़िलिस्तीन पर भारत ने कोई स्टैंड नहीं लिया या फिर कोई क्वेश्चन रेज नहीं किया, उस वजह से है, या फिर जो है जिस तरह से अभी फॉरेन पॉलिसी या फिर जिस तरह से बाकी के देशों के साथ भारत के संबंध अभी दिख रहे हैं, क्या ये फ़िलिस्तीन पर चुप रहने की वजह से है? ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में किसी ने हमारा साथ नहीं दिया, स्टेटमेंट कोई ऐसा किसी देश का आया नहीं जिससे लगे कि भारत के साथ है?
कि जो आपने प्रश्न पूछा है ये बड़ा गंभीर और गहरा प्रश्न है और इसके उत्तर में बहुत सारी बातें, बहुत सारे पहलू उजागर किए जा सकते हैं। आपने फ़िलिस्तीन की बात करी, यूक्रेन की बात भी हो सकती है, उसके साथ साथ हमारे पड़ोस की बात हो सकती है। क्या कुछ ना कहना का कारण है कि लोग आपके साथ खड़े नहीं हो पा रहे हैं क्योंकि आपने कुछ कहा नहीं, आप कुछ बोले नहीं, या क्योंकि लोग खड़े नहीं हैं इसलिए आप बोलते नहीं हैं? पहले क्या है, उसके बाद क्या है, इस पर थोड़ा सा विचार करने की आवश्यकता है। आपको अगर आत्मविश्वास है, आप अगर कॉन्फिडेंट हैं कि हम जो सही है वही कर रहे हैं और हम वहीं खड़े हैं, जो बात उचित है उसी पर हम प्रतिबद्ध हैं जहाँ खड़े हैं, तो फिर आपके लिए कहना भी संभव हो जाता है, आसान हो जाता है। अगर आप अपने पे आत्मविश्वास नहीं कर पा रहे हैं और आप जान नहीं रहे हैं और आप ये मानते हैं, और मुझे लगता है कभी कभी कि सरकार के जो व्यक्तित्व आते हैं उससे मुझे ये लगता है कि सरकार ये मान गई है कि अब अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर विदेश नीति विभिन्न देशों की ट्रांजैक्शनल है, वो एक सौदा है, सौदा करो और चलो। हमारी जो विदेश नीति थी महात्मा गांधी के समय से, जो चीज़ हमने यहाँ पर स्थापित की थी और जिस पर हम लोग कार्य करते थे, उसमें एक वैल्यू भी थी, उसमें नैतिकता भी थी। ये मानता हूँ कि प्रैग्मैटिक्स और प्रैक्टिकलिटी भी विदेश नीति में होनी चाहिए और होती है, लेकिन कहीं ना कहीं नैतिकता का भी टच होना चाहिए। नैतिकता का टच हम खो बैठे हैं, मुझे ऐसा लगता है, और नैतिकता का क्या भाग हो सकता है और उसका क्या उपयोग हो सकता है, इस पर विचार करने की आवश्यकता है। विदेश नीति बिना नैतिकता के मैं समझता हूँ कि बड़ी खोखली होती है।
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hello,
Beto.
I am SS Kirmani, member of this club. As directed by my president, I will be very brief. Now, India's foreign policy is moving from non-alignment to multi-alignment. In the context of this, how does India balances its autonomy while dealing with multiple blocs, US-led West, Russia, and China, and you can also mention global South without sacrificing India's long-term interest?
देखिए इसके दो इश्यूज़ हैं, two very important issues. You have mentioned you mentioned multi-alignment. My interest is in multipolarity. Are we a pole somewhere? People say that the world has changed. The world of yesterday has gone. Whether there was Cold War, there were two poles, and then there was a unipolar world, and then unipolar world is now beginning to look at a new world order that will be multipolar. तो multipolar अगर है तो उसमें हम भी कोई पोल हैं कि नहीं हैं, कि हम सिर्फ एक फुटबॉल की तरह कभी एक पोल की तरफ जा रहे हैं फिर किसी और पोल की तरफ जा रहे हैं. The whole worrisome thing is to make foreign policy transactional. What you can get today, you go there. What you can give tomorrow, you can go there. So multi-alignment is not the answer. Multi-alignment is not being aligned at all. Good thing you're not aligned, good thing. But multi-aligned means you're nowhere. Do you know your position? Do you know where you are? And let people align with you. That would be important, no? That if you don't have any other poles that people can go towards or they don't want to go towards, then you should yourself at least become somewhat of a candidate as a pole so that people get attracted towards you. I'm afraid India, with the vast resources that it has, resources in terms of its accomplishment, in terms of its stature and standing, India is not attracting people towards itself as a pole. And I do hope that India will at least have the ambition and aspiration to become an important pole in the world if there's going to be a multipolar world.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give a chance. We will.
Salman bhai, my name is Iqbal Ahmed. India, in its pursuit of being a global power or quote-unquote Vishwaguru, it has completely neglected its South Asian neighbors. Forget about the historical enmity between India and Pakistan. But today the situation is that the closest ally of India in South Asia is Taliban. So do you think that India could or should come to its neighbors, forget Pakistan, so it could be a leader of the South Asian nations, including Pakistan or even excluding Pakistan? Could India play a major role in the South Asia? As I said, that the closest ally today of India is Taliban.
Well, I don't want to comment on any attempt where a relationship is sought to be created. You know that we had a remarkable, rich relationship with Afghanistan. We have had a traditional, rich relationship with Afghanistan. But there were problems with the Taliban government. Now, we've tried to find some connectivity with the Taliban government, and we've made some outreach, etc. But how useful is that going to be? And what is the purpose of this outreach to Afghanistan? We don't know. How useful will it be in terms of the rest of the world looking at what kind of a special relationship we will build up, if we'll build up at all, with Afghanistan? If we are doing it in order to serve another purpose, it's a different matter. My enemy's enemy is my friend is a very short-sighted foreign policy. It's a very short-sighted foreign policy. You are right about the need to address the immediate neighborhood. Afghanistan is our extended neighborhood. But the need to address our immediate neighborhood, and in the extended neighborhood, I think there's a need to address the Central Asian countries, if that we want to do. On a score sheet today, we have very little to show for these two regions, very little to show. And I'm not saying that the fault is entirely ours, but there is somewhere something that has gone wrong. And those countries have to manage their own affairs, undoubtedly. Undoubtedly, they have to manage their own affairs. But that they should have gone so badly wrong vis-a-vis India is something which is unforgivable. And I think that we didn't read the messages at the right time. Certainly, Nepal and Bangladesh, I think we didn't read the messages at the right time. We can only hope for the best, because at the end of the day, unless you have a comfortable relationship in your neighborhood, you can't have a comfortable relationship in the world. That's very clear. Today, being able to reach globally is suddenly looking like under a very important question. Look at what's happened in Venezuela, and what have other established world powers been able to do? The established world powers have been able to do precious little. But of course, this is something in progress. So what has happened today may be very different from what happens a week later. But whatever is happening in Venezuela and in that region is not a matter of comfort to us or for anybody else in the world.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah. So you mentioned that. So my name is Akshat. I live in Oslo, and I'm a student. So I wanted to ask, you mentioned that foreign policy should be inclusive and agreeable to the views of population. But in my opinion and my understanding, the friendship with China and Pakistan was very unpopular at the time and still is. Isn't it very similar to what is happening with Gaza right now, where if we make friendships or lead the effort with Palestine, it is kind of unpopular in the zeitgeist? I might be wrong, so I want your views on, is it true or am I just in a bubble?
I mean, in case your data is authentic and correct, I bow to it. That if your country's people think in a particular direction that you as an enlightened government feel is wrong, then your job is to educate your people. You have to do something that persuades them that their reservations are wrong. But I believe that in what you have said, I will agree that there is a lot of negativity about Pakistan and the people of Pakistan, but more so the government of Pakistan. But the same level of negativity is there about the people and government of China. I am not quite sure. If you look at what's happening with trade, the one-sided trade, Chinese trade coming to India, and Indians going there to buy up all kinds of things, etc. I'm not sure that China is unpopular with an average Indian, but maybe there isn't enough data available. But nevertheless, we cannot forget that you can't choose your neighbors. You can choose your friends, but you can't choose your neighbors. A foreign policy has to address the fact that we have a certain set of neighbors and that we have to live with them. And I think this has been understood. This has been understood that we have to live with our neighbors. But how will you live, in what manner will you live with your neighbors is a question that you have to be in government to answer. It's not a responsibility of the opposition to decide this.
Sir, hi, I'm Divya from the Indian Express. I write on foreign policy. I wanted to ask you, while India has been slapped with 50% tariff by the US, and there is now a thing about 500% tariff for importing Russian oil, why is India being singled out and why has China been left out of this? What do you think is reason for this differential treatment?
The very fact that we've been singled out is indicative of what? That China has more weight than we have. So that weight that China has is the weight that we should have. We think we have weight, but we don't have weight. China, whatever it thinks, does have weight. And that's very, very clear in this distinction that has been drawn. See, what is happening is that people are playing games that India either doesn't understand or is not willing to join. And those games are that they line up together to isolate the third person, and then they line up with the third person to isolate somebody else. And India is just looking from one to the other and then back to the first, etc., without being able to take any position whatsoever. The problem is not being able to take positions. You get slighted by one, you go and meet the other one. You get slighted by that one, you go and meet the third one, etc., etc. Now, this is not the behavior of a self-confident country, self-confident person. If you're self-confident, you should be able to say, if this is it, we will take it upon ourselves, but we will not budge. You know, remember what President Kennedy and Khrushchev did when the missile crisis happened in Cuba. Who would blink first? Khrushchev blinked first. They came to the edge completely at the fringe of a nuclear war. President Kennedy was prepared for total destruction of the United States, but he didn't blink. It was Khrushchev who blinked. Here, we shut our eyes. There's no real question of blinking. We just shut our eyes. I think that's the problem.
Thank you. Yes, Tawqir. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm Tawqir Sir, and I work with Japan News.
Where?
Sir, I just...
Hi.
Yes, sir. Hi. Sir, I just want to know that what prompted Congress to issue the statement on Venezuela. Hours after that, the Indian government issued a statement already. And if I would like to ask you also that about India's neighborhood first policy. You see whatever is going on in our neighborhood, there are the strong crises erupting and our relationships are impacting. Do you think that this is the time when we should actually rework or rethink about the neighborhood first policy?
Well, we need to We need to work on the neighborhood. There's no doubt. It's no rocket science what you need to do with the neighborhood. You have to be supportive of your neighborhood, but obviously you can't be supportive of certain things happening in the neighborhood which are completely anti-Indian. You can't be supportive of that. But for things to have got to that point, somebody should have counseled, somebody should have understood, somebody should have prepared. Were we not caught unprepared, completely unprepared? That's the critical thing. That's the troubling thing. As far as Venezuela is concerned, we were careful. We held back for 24 hours. We didn't make a statement because we thought, let the government take a view and then we'll come with a statement. But since nothing had come with clarity, 24 hours later, we thought that we would make a statement. And we made that statement because the principle that is involved in Venezuela, the principle that's involved in Venezuela is very, very central to our thinking in terms of India's place in the world and India's place in its own region. And we believe that that was being violated. And violated today, and what would happen to us tomorrow if the same thing was attempted on us in even a fraction of that matter would be unacceptable. It has been unacceptable. It will remain unacceptable. So how much of that unacceptability we must do in silence and how much of that we must do by way of specific statements, etc. We had to think seriously about it because it's not that we want to break away with the relationship with the United States of America. Obviously, everybody in India, particularly the upper middle classes and the business classes in India, want to continue with a wholesome relationship with the United States. So we kept that in mind. But you cannot forego taking positions is the important thing. Just because something is going to be inconvenient, you will not take a position. I think we have to be prepared for inconvenience. As a nation, we should be prepared for inconvenience if a principle is involved.
Thank you. Yes, please. Right.
Khurshid Sahab, how do you interpret the relationship between Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump? 10 months of it, there has been no tariff, no result on tariff.
Yeah, close.
No result on tariffs. And now you have some kind of being reminded, the Sindhu, the Nobel Prize, and now the tariff itself has gone up to 500%.
मुझे गाना याद आ गया, दोस्त दोस्त ना रहा, प्यार प्यार ना रहा, जिंदगी एतबार ना रहा.
Yes, please.
वो किसका दोस्त रहा भाई वेद साहब? ट्रम्प किसका दोस्त रहा भाई? ब्रिटेन का रहा, जर्मनी का रहा, किसका रहा भाई दोस्त?
आप बोलो.
चाइना रहा, ये भी बताओ भाई. तो मोदी के बारे में क्यों बोल रहे हैं?
Yes, please.
Yeah, this is Vibhuti. I am from the Sambad, the largest circulated daily of Odisha.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you one thing. What is your opinion? How do you? What is your perceptions regarding on the Bangladesh and India relationships? Why the government silent? And Trump's doctrine is always he is insulting Modi right now, but our government is silent. Why?
I would have answered if you asked me why are you silent, but you're asking me about government. Therefore, it will be a little difficult for me to answer, because if we begin to answer on behalf of the government, then you people say that these guys are edging closer to the government. So, frankly, it's an uncomfortable position. It's a very uncomfortable position. And these are questions that only they can answer, frankly. Prime Minister Modi and President Trump can answer. And how good President Trump is at answering questions, you are fully aware. So I'm not sure that that improves or makes it more difficult. But you've asked about Bangladesh. You know, the Bangladesh situation is bad enough for us not to say something and make it worse. It is tragic. It is very hurtful. It is very painful, particularly people who have an Indian connection, and the manner in which they're being treated in Bangladesh is completely unacceptable. But don't forget that we have sacrificed a great deal for Bangladesh in 1971 war. And there are many people in Bangladesh who believe that that is something that is etched, and I'm using words of their important people, saying that the memory of 1971 is etched on our soul, and that will never go, that will never go. But it's not apparent in the streets of Bangladesh. So I think something has gone seriously wrong between those who were in command and control in Bangladesh and the new generations that have come long after 1971. And obviously, we were reading signals that were coming only from a limited segment of Bangladesh society. Therefore, I said that we didn't read the signals well enough, and we didn't prepare ourselves well enough. But it is a complicated situation, and the less we say about it, the better it will be. Let us just hope that they can return to normalcy and that our relations with Bangladesh will be preserved. That's all I can say. One can only make it worse by saying things which should perhaps not be said at this point of time. Sure.
Sir, I am Ashok B. Sharma, a freelance journalist. The Trump's 50% tariff for buying of Russian oil and intends to increase it to 500%. Is it WTO compatible?
But see, the problem about WTO is that how seriously that President Trump take WTO. How many international, multinational organizations that he has withdrawn from recently in the last 2 days, 38 or something. So the problem with President Trump is that he is rewriting the world order, and he is rewriting the very idea of international relations, etc. Now, who can stop him? I mean, a midterm election can stop him to an extent if they have a change as far as the mood in the United States is concerned. But today he's in complete control. Now, look at what's happened to Europe. Look at how Europe is being able to do precious little. And if Europe, which is part of NATO with the United States, is being able to do precious little, what can other countries of the world, particularly countries like India, do? This is the big question. Now, how much can we take and how much can we accommodate and adjust is a question on which the government should have an open discussion in order to make sure that the people of India are taken into confidence. Because ultimately, the cost will descend upon the people of India. And if we are not prepared for tough times, because somebody is imposing tough times, then it's a test of our character, frankly. So let us see. It is government's responsibility. Sometimes it is good not to be in government. It's government's responsibility to find the answer.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll take two
Sir,
more questions.
on the backdrop of Venezuela and Ukraine and West Asia, is United Charter is outdated or unfit for the purpose?
Which one, sorry?
On the backdrop of Venezuela, Ukraine and West Asia, UN Charter outdated or unfit for the purpose?
No, you know, we all know that the UN system has many inadequacies. But we also know that everybody knew from the word go that the United Nations is not a perfect system. It's an imperfect system that must be made to work because it is the best system that is available. It's like democracy. Sometimes people say democracy is not the best, but democracy is not the ideal system, but it is the best that you have available. Nothing better than democracy, so you make do with democracy. So that's the trouble with the United Nations. If you don't have United Nations, then whatever you are able to do, even that will not be happen. Sometimes giving vent to your feelings in a Security Council or General Assembly is something that is, in a sense, like a balm, like a medical treatment of a harsh thing that has happened to you. So can't suggest a better thing. Therefore, it's the best that we have, and let's keep it secure if we can. There are reforms of the UN that are required, and these things will probably push the reforms quicker and faster. But right now, I don't think we've got anything better. At least we know where to sit down and talk. If that is also not possible, it'll be much worse.
Hi, my name is Narayanan and I work for German television. Just wanted to ask you this, like you are seeing the whole turnaround of things from 1990s to this time, from W2 to GATT to all other things. There was a general agreement on tariff and trade. Now the one-to-one agreement is, that is a change. And Congress party was accused of, liberating Indian economy, and at that time Congress party was really cornered because of agreeing with the GATT. So what is the change now in the United States and the world, so that the countries are going to one-to-one kind of transactional in tariff, transactional in the foreign policy? What is that you see?
Well, see, obviously it's the same kind of sense that people had in the UK when Brexit happened. When UK broke away from Brexit, is because they felt and assumed that the advantages of remaining separate are much greater. I think there is a second round of thinking on that now in the United Kingdom, but it's not easy to get back into the European Union. So there are advantages of coming together, there are disadvantages of coming together. When India has negotiations for free trade in the region of Southeast Asia, there are advantages and there are disadvantages. Obviously, because of domestic pressures, we find sometimes very difficult to reach out to something which is in the long run very useful, but in the short run would be a little negative for some people at least, or some sectors, etc. So the trouble is, you move away from a multilateral system and you make bilateral arrangements, then aggregation will have to happen again at some point of time. And when that aggregation happens, you will have to rediscover and reinvent the very institutions that you have destroyed. So I think we are in a churning process today in the world where people think that by moving away from arrangements that are multilateral, they can get some immediate advantage. But how long will that advantage last? In our own country, how we give out cash benefits before an election and we win the election. But point really remains is, can you afford to give cash benefits throughout the 5 years that you will then be in power? And when you're not going to be able to do that, what would be the consequences is the question. So it's like a breakup of an economic arrangement that may seem helpful at that moment, but in the long term will become a disaster. So do we have leadership in the world that can think far enough and that has shoulders wide enough to take the burden of saying no at this point of time is a big question. Fortunately, we don't have to be too tough in taking these decisions. Things haven't yet got that far for us in India, but it may. One multilateral arrangement that we were hoping would develop for growth in our region was SAARC, but you know that SAARC was sabotaged, or SAARC failed for a variety of reasons. But SAARC was in a nascent stage, and therefore we didn't have to suffer in terms of the outcomes that stalling of SAARC brought about. But for the rest of the world where arrangements are made, economic arrangements are made, the stalling of those economic arrangements can be very, very expensive and very costly.
Thank you. Last question, please. You wanted to ask a question, right? Yeah. You still wanted to ask? Okay. Mainak? I can take Mainak's last question. Yes, please.
Hi. I have a question on India's stand on buying Russian oil. That's one. The other one is, do you believe that India has gone a little overboard in defending its stand of buying cheap Russian oil? I mean, instead of enlisting why it is in India's interest to buy cheap oil from Russia, did we go overboard and attack other countries, including Europe? You mentioned about, you know, the famous statement about Europe's problem is not the world's problem. Did we go a little overboard there?
Yeah, I think that, frankly, the Europeans were far more considerate to us than anybody else has been. But then the fact was that the Europeans were still at that time, when they showed the thoughtfulness towards India, they were still importing gas from Russia, and therefore not being completely hypocritical in saying, why doesn't India stop right away, was understandable. But unfortunately, that has not remained static, and India had two reasons. One was a simple transactional reason for getting cheap oil. We could have possibly negotiated cheap oil from elsewhere as well. But the other thing was also that we had to stand by the Russian Federation. We believed that we owed it to the Russian Federation to stand by them. And of course, the Russian Federation needed India to buy its oil. And therefore, that was like a matter of solidarity and a matter of standing by a friend. But Mr. Trump has decided to make that very, very difficult, almost impossible. So it'd be interesting to see what India does in the next few weeks. It'd be very, very tough. I certainly am very happy that I'm not in a position that I have to make that call.
I'll take one more question, and that's it. Yes, please. Yeah. Yeah, speak. Yeah.
Sir, I am Vijay Bhaskar, Supreme Court advocate. My question is on the Kashmir issue. In the Trump administration, whether the India has an edge or Pakistan has an edge. That is the first question. The second question is, Trump said during that Operation Sindoor, I stopped that war. But this present government said the request came from the Pakistan, therefore we stopped the war. But in the parliament, that Congress could not get a clear clarification from the government who stopped the work, ceasefire.
Well, I mean, just to be clever, the government would have said the war hasn't stopped.
Who stopped?
No, I said I'm just trying to be clever. Government could have said that we haven't stopped the war yet. They said we've only... No. They're saying that we've... No, they're saying Operation Sindoor is on, and they're saying that it is only put in abeyance or suspended, etc. So they don't have to answer who stopped it because they're saying it's not stopped. So, you know, we have a leader in this country who is very good with words. But the trouble is, we were told as children that the trouble is that they say that bricks, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never harm me. But sometimes words begin to harm. That's a worrisome thing. This is a very complicated situation. I think a big discovery was made during this 4-day conflict or 4-day confrontation that happened. And it could well be that the operation is still on. The operation is still on is a word that we can take from the government. But the operation didn't get triggered once again after Red Fort is something that leaves us a bit puzzled and a bit confused. There wasn't even a reference to the operation still being on as far as the Red Fort blast were concerned, but be that as it may, the fact remains that India discovered, these are the byproducts of that 4-day confrontation. India discovered really who is a friend in times of need and who is not a friend. India discovered that. And India also discovered many, many new dimensions of warfare, where you don't have to put boots on the ground, where you don't have to put pilots in the air in peril, etc., that you can fight a digital war, or you can fight a a war which is of a new kind, etc. So that maybe helps us prepare better for anything that happens in future. We also may have discovered a lot about military equipment in our region. I don't want to mention countries, but military equipment in our region for which we need to be better prepared. I think we may have discovered. So not a bad thing that in 4 days you discover so many things, and if we can put them to good use, we will be better prepared for things to happen in future. But once again, these are answers that the government should give and must give, but it hasn't given. We can only ask. We can't do more than asking and insisting that these answers be given.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, you want to say something?
Salman Sahib, you talked of, and I think I totally agree with it, the need of a domestic consensus. That's very important for any successful pursuit of foreign policy. But here, I'll mention some very hard, facts. The point is how much, Congress party, as the principled opposition party, over the last 10 or 11 years, tried to build that consensus when the top Congress leadership considers anything coming out of Trump's mouth as Veda. Trump says something and they demand that the Indian government must explain. Anything is written in New York Times and Washington Post, you demand an explanation from your, as if they are the only source of knowledge. And recently, the way some section of the Congress leadership is saying that Operation Sindoor, the Pakistan won and India lost. So when such type of noises come out, how really does it help in building that consensus? And as I think the very first question that he asked, I think there is a tremendous sense of continuity in our foreign policy. Whatever maybe your criticism is, whether strategic autonomy or multi-alignment, the fact remains that one of the important things this government has done, and I think that you will appreciate that the traditional criticism of India's foreign policy was this, that India never had a proactive foreign policy. It was more or less, 99% cases, it was a reactive foreign policy. But here at least something was proactive in the sense that building of that international solar alliance, like next month you are going to have that artificial AI summit, or for that matter even India trying to become a pole. As you rightly said, every government tries to do something. Whether they succeed or not is a different matter. But the fact remains that you, during the G20, tried to bring Africa in. You expanded, played an important role in expanding that BRICS. So in that sense, I think there is a continuity. You might have initiated thing and they have not deviated from that stand. And about the Russia, you said, I think if you said that we didn't support Russia initially, I think had we not supported Russia or not bought this Russian oil, then I think this is very contradictory when we said that Trump is imposing 50% or 500%. I think we did buy oil from them. They were not happy with our stand as far as Russia was concerned right from the beginning of the Ukraine war, and that is why this sort of reaction. And then coming back to West Asia, the fact is, I think today India is in a position that I think we have got excellent relations with almost all the countries in West Asia. I think no Indian Prime Minister must have visited these countries in this region as many times as this present Prime Minister has been. I think he has got the highest civilian or national awards of each and every important country in the region. So I think that is little unfair, but the point is I totally agree that it's not that they have totally failed in ताली तो दो हाथ में मिलना चाहिए ना. तो वो अगर गलती की है, how you are helping it, how your party is helping in building that consensus. Thank you.
You've asked me so many questions that we would need one more evening for this.
We'll do it next time.
But I think that's an important point that you've raised. I would make a distinction between what is seen as good relationship in the Middle East, for instance, in West Asia, and what is the final product. When the trouble happened and the confrontation took place, countries like Saudi Arabia were not with us. They were not with us, although there's a remarkable relationship, and we can acknowledge that Saudi Arabia has tried to reach out to India in many, many ways, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and so on and so forth. But they were not with us, clearly. United States of America, despite the President having said that the Prime Minister is a very, very dear friend of mine, and the entire backdrop of the arrangements that they had for each other, and Ab Ki Baar, Trump Sarkar, etc. But the United States of America didn't clearly come out in favor of India. Now, what is it that we could do in a system, in a stage, in a matter in which the government was not getting what was its due? Could only be possible if we were reached out to and we were told, please step in. You've also had experience, you also have relations, please step in and help. We need to work together. Now, I will acknowledge because of what you've said, that some attempt was made by the government to reach out to us. It was not an easy attempt as far as we are concerned. When the government said that we are sending delegations across the globe and we want Congress leaders to come with us as well, and I was asked by the government to come. Now, we had a little problem there because you can't be critical of the government at home in India and then go and say something different in Japan and in Indonesia and in Malaysia, etc. Because some smart journalist like yours will get up and ask a question that in India you said something else, now you're coming and telling us another story. So it was not easy, it was tough, particularly because of that question that is asked that Mr. Trump said X and Mr. Trump said Y. Now, on the very first day I received flack because government said Mr. Trump had nothing to do with this, and my own party had taken the view that Mr. Trump is the one who has stopped the war, etc. Now, what do? A poor person like me, when I go abroad, what do? And I remembered a story that was once told in the Oxford Union. Somebody who had to speak on the subject of smoking is smoking and drinking are two worst things in life. And he picked up a cigarette packet and he looked at that packet which said smoking is injurious for your health. Then he turned around and he said, it also says this is by appointment to Her Majesty the Queen of England. He said, what does an honest person do? Does the honest person say smoking is dangerous, or does the honest person say that this is given to my sovereign and leader, therefore I believe this is a good thing to do? So these problems did arise. I agree that this is not an easy world to deal with, but I will just leave it on that one important point that you made about continuity. I am willing to say there is continuity, at least in substance there is continuity, but the present foreign minister, who's been an outstanding diplomat in my time, he was ambassador to China and ambassador to the United States of America. He was not my foreign secretary, but he was an outstanding ambassador. He was an outstanding ambassador. His repeated lectures say that everything before 2014 was bunkum, and everything that's happened has happened after 2014. Now, if I agree, I will lose my job. If he agrees, he will lose his job.
I think nobody will agree with you.
No, but I'm just saying that for me, it's difficult for me to say, yes, there's continuity, and that continuity will be that everything you've done is useless and bunkum, etc. So that's the reason I'm just leaving it at that rather than taking it to a conclusion.
I think we'll take it to a conclusion. Just before I give the mic for the vote of thanks, I would like to 3 points for you people to come. I think the crowd today here is beyond the imagination that this is a full house, and thanks to everybody who has contributed to the the people to come. The FCC is open for memberships. You can be a member, journalistic associate, you can be a corporate associate. And also, I would like to request the president of the IIC that our club members are asking me, why don't we have some kind of an MOU or collaboration with IIC? They like the food there, they like your place. I think we needed to do something on that. I think we need to do something on that. Yes, we will be happy to have, because there are good restaurants, good places. Thank you so much, and thank you, Mr. President. And I wanted to ask you all, please, whenever you are quoting Mr. Salman Khurshid in anything in this particular event, do mention the FCC event, that he was at the FCC, because that also gives us the credibility that we have already have the honor of having him with us. Mr. Narayanan, please give the vote of thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. It was an amazing evening, Salman Khurshid Saab. And you sit on a fence or your ground, whatever it is, foreign policy is a very, very difficult subject in this time. And we'll be having more such programs. And thank you so much.
I'll just present you with a small memento from our club. So to welcome you and to...
Yeah.